Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artist Index and sponsored by the great folks at Heavenly Spirits Imports. And as we do with every podcast, going to ask the guest to introduce themselves, spell their names. It's for the historical record. It's also because sometimes people are traveling around and there's an artist that lights them up, so to speak, and they hear a name and it's not quite the right name. So with that in mind, go for it.
Good morning, Mark Barry, Markbarry.
Simple enough. I'm assuming you and assumptions are bad things sometimes. I'm assuming you never really have problems with your name, right?
No, well, a lot of people call it Barry. For some reason, instead of Barry, they go to Barry.
Barry, there you go. And then they ask you, so what's your last name?
What's that?
Do they ask you, so what's your last name?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes I get that too. Yeah.
Yeah, my first intern ever, and I've spoken about this before, her name was Anne Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
And she was plagued constantly by two things. No, I'm not in any way related to her, the star. And B, that Margaret is my last name. Well, what's your middle name?
Yeah,
I don't have one.
I don't ride motorcycles.
You know? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So, I always usually begin by asking people about that moment. You know, the moment of consciousness when they knew that this was going to happen. They were going to be an artist. And sometimes it's way back in time when they were children. And other times, I just had a podcast guest. He was well along in years. I just woke up one morning after a career in advertising as a copywriter and said, I got to paint.
Mm-hmm.
For no explicable reason, just went with that feeling. So how about you?
I didn't realize you could be an artist. Like a lot of the swing students come from working class backgrounds, and swing was a big deal, allowing kids, young people to see there was something out there besides just working in factories, which I did as a kid. And I always drew. I always doodled cartoons. The comic pages were my museum. My parents never took us to a museum. It just wasn't what we did. My dad sketched a lot. He would just sit in the window and he would just leave it. There'd be like these beautiful airplanes that he drew. He was in the Air Force and flew in a B-24, so planes were always on his mind. He loved to draw them. So I started copying that, and I would do my own drawings. I went into the Air Force too at some point, once I got out of high school, not knowing really what I wanted to do, and drew on bombs. And everywhere, it's always just started. After a while, I just started sketching a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got out of school, out of the Air Force, I found swaying for, I don't know how I went to a guidance counselor at the local high school, and she had just gotten this portfolio or brochure from the school, and I checked it. I went down, made an appointment, and I met with David Smith. I had a little sketchbook. It was actually vellum paper that I had done some drawings on. And he let me in on that. He said, I'm going to take a chance with you. I said, thank you very much. And it took off. So that's when it really started to, I can do this. I can be an artist. This is actually something I can do.
Yeah. So where were you born?
Worcester.
Worcester.
I grew up in Webster, which is just south of there, right on the Connecticut border.
Yeah. Worcester and Webster.
Lake Chicagagog, man, Chicagagog, Shibunagungamog. That's the big lake there.
Yeah. You also have a lake monster out there too, right? Supposedly.
I never found it. I'm sure there is one, but I've never seen it. I've been all over that lake for many years, but I haven't been there quite a while. But I don't think there ever was one.
Yeah, that section of Massachusetts, Connecticut seems to be very. It's almost like another one of those triangles, like they have the Bridgewater Triangle over here.
Yeah. Well, there's burial grounds. There's a lot of Native American burial grounds in that area too, like on the Rhode Island side, actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, what are your earliest recollections of Swain? I mean, okay, so David Smith, and I've heard a story like this from several different people with other, at other institutions. Where you go for your portfolio review, you really have no idea what the hell's going on because
Mhm.
high school probably didn't set you up for this.
Yeah.
You're ready for what's going to happen, and it wasn't really back in the '70s. It wasn't all that formal. I remember myself, Herb Cummings, to this day, still one of my favorite instructors ever, who just looked at my stuff and said, "Yeah," and I'm like standing there, and he goes, "So what are you waiting for? Get your ass to admissions. You're in."
Yeah. Get to work.
And another friend who didn't, he had no real artistic training in high school. It was like a real travesty. It was more like a study hall with drawing to keep you quiet.
Yeah.
And the instructor just saw something in him that he didn't know he had and sent him off to, get into admissions,
Keep you out of jail.
Yeah. Well, actually, or asylums or whatever, because I really think that, a lot of us, if we didn't have this,
it saved my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do and was kind of lost, but that was it. That's what I was looking for, but I just didn't know it was there.
Yeah. Do you believe in exposure? The things that you were exposed to as a child. I mean, you talked about your dad doing sketches and such.
Yeah. Sure, there's part of that in there, but there's part of it that it's just like making the painting itself. You don't know where it comes from half the time. You don't know how it ended up half the time. And that's like life itself. You never know. And like meeting my wife, Sandra, who also went to Swain, we met there. Who knows who you're going to meet? Who knows who you're going to come in contact with and where you're going to end up? I'm shocked at where we've ended up over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to my favorite movie, Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
I mean, the symbolism in that is like just, unbelievable. And I've watched it, I don't know, 10, 15 times.
Perseverance.
Pardon me?
Perseverance.
Yeah. I mean, I've just seen things in there that I didn't notice the first, 10 of 9 or 14 times, that kind of thing. And it is about perseverance. And then there's this thing about fate and destiny, you just really never know. So I think exposure is being aware of what's going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, you got to be someplace. You just can't stay in a hole.
No. But you got to do, in that whole sense, you got to be doing the work. And when the opportunity arises, you're doing that work and you're ready to jump in. So you're all set to go. And so you just keep on going.
Yeah. Now let me ask you about your work. Do you do preparatory sketches for your work or
not always? A lot of times I sketch right on the canvas and then just start erasing and moving. And I look for stuff within that. So things that I don't know where they're coming from, those little Buddhist gifts kind of things that will show up, and you run with it. So for me that keeps it more free. I have a tendency to overdo and not shut up and just and that takes a lot of holding back to figure out how to do that. That's a really big thing for me. Simplicity is not always my first way.
Yeah, I can understand. I can understand that totally. And because of Herb Cummings, that instructor I told you about at SMU, and his Buddhist predilections, he was a Quaker by birth.
Very similar.
And with his Buddhist predilections, he helped me break things down. And I always tell people the 3 most important marks, whether drawing or painting, is the first mark is important. because that's what destroys the whiteness. That's, like Picasso says, the first act of creation is an act of destruction. The second one creates that relationship with the first one, and you're off and running on that.
Sure.
And then the one that I, I had issues with, like you did, is like stop for a stop. That's the last mark.
Yep.
You put that, you got to know that that's the stroke. It's done.
Yeah. I draw a lot, though. I do a tremendous amount of drawing every day, and I have a notebook in the car. Whenever I'm traveling, I always have something going. Yeah. And I usually leave my paper out so it gets dirty, intentionally gets dirty. So there'll be stains all over it, coffee stains and whatnot. And then so that the paper's already broken in.
Okay. Now you spoke about what's that? I'm sorry.
I like clean paper.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you got to, and I think the writers have that writer's block. They're staring at the blank page, and there's a lot of artists who have that blank canvas or blank sheet of paper thing as well. And it's like, okay, you gotta make a mark. You gotta get.
Yeah, it's gonna sit there forever.
Yeah, exactly. The Buddhist gifts was another thing that you said that was really, really interesting. Again, because of Herb Cummings, and having these inexplicable, but who cares, out of body experiences where I've actually been in towards the ceiling, staring down at myself painting, and aware of myself painting as much as being aware of watching myself painting, and just going with it and thinking to myself, I see almost like a three minds,
Sure.
Saying, wow, this is kind of cool.
There's like a big resurgence of people doing LSD and those little levels of it just to change their whatever it is.
Their consciousness, yeah.
That's like what you're saying now. That's like maybe it would work in that sense too.
Yeah. It's funny because sometimes you're painting, you have I can't do sketches. I as a former abstractionist, I thought it was kind of bizarre that we were trained in a traditional manner. And then when I started leaning towards abstraction, it was like, this is kind of bizarre. So I'm going to do all these sketches. I'm going to pick one, and then I'm going to make a painting of a sketch, which is totally ridiculous. So I started working, a la prima, like a lot of abstractionists do.
Let it go.
Yeah.
So I'll rework. I'll draw, then I'll often put watercolor on top of that, and then I'll do oil pastel on top of that, and just get the layers and see where that goes. And sometimes I draw before a painting. Sometimes I take that painting and I get drawings out of that, and then it moves on. So I often think as a drawing, it's a piece in itself.
So they're almost like stepping stones.
Yeah. They go off in other directions, and then that's where the other paintings come from too. So as long as I'm in a routine, I'm happiest. So one painting often leads to another painting. There's one thing in that painting that may become another painting. And then when you overpaint, sometimes when I overpaint, I'll have too much going on in a painting. There's 3 or 4 paintings in that one painting that becomes something else. So
yeah.
So that, and if I can keep the process going, if I don't have to like last week I went to Baltimore to see my daughter, which is a lovely thing, but it's 10 days away. And so now I'm in the process of just getting it all back together again. It takes me a while to get it all running again.
Oh, I understand completely. I mean, as an abstractionist, I painted serially, and all that meant is that I had like something in my head, and it's a Virgo OCD kind of bizarre thing. I would just like apply a number. I'm going to do 10, 15, 20 canvases with this thought in my head, and I'm just going to approach them and do it that way. Now that I've changed over to more objective work, like the 3 series that I have, because I don't have any independent paintings. It's trying to explain to people, they don't all look the same because that wasn't the intent. The intent was it's a series because I'm working through a bunch of canvases with one theme.
Sure.
And one of them I did my Greenwood series. The last piece was I was starting to fire on all cylinders, and like you said, something pulls you away and breaks that bloody momentum.
Sure. Well, look at Basileus. Look at somebody like Basileus, the same figure upside down over and over and over for years now. And he's changed it in all different ways, but that same figure. And the last show, actually, I get to a point where I've seen this already. It's been going on quite a while, and the market is huge for them. But they are looking good. There's some nice things in each, even in the pieces that he's been working on today. So
let me ask you, when people see your work for the first time, you know how people are. They need a touchstone of some sort. They need to label. Because it's like putting a bookmark in your brain, you know, someplace they can go back to. Who do they most attribute your work to?
Avery. A lot of times that's the simplicity, the large blocks. I even got a Rothko a few times with the color, because the big patterns of color. There's different things. Then I always say, yeah, they copied from me. They've been using me a lot. So.
How about Chagall?
Yeah, that there used to be some of that, but I haven't heard that for a while.
You think it's because he's kind of fallen away? You know, everybody has their moment in the sun kind of thing.
I haven't actually seen a lot of his work lately. Yeah, there's a big resurgence in Avery. There's a Christie's show out on the Hamptons of stuff coming from a collection. But some of them are gorgeous. I had never seen some of these. This is the beauty of these auctions. This stuff's been in private collections for years. I was like, where did that come from? Yeah.
It's funny. You know,
and the art fairs too. You see it at the art fairs where there'll be a lot of stuff that you'll never see it again. It's like that was it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in art history, it was limited. I mean, there's only so many color plates they could put into a book.
Yeah,
so many slides they had in the collection.
Color plates. I was in Florence and got to go to the Medici, to the library. I got a pass and went in, and once I get in there, they weren't real happy because I didn't speak Italian, so they didn't run. But one of the people was very nice to me. But I got a portombo, a drawing, an actual drawing. They brought it out, and they gave me the book with it. That was a photograph of that drawing. And they said, "You want the book?" I said, "No, I want the drawing. I want the drawing." They brought it out, and I was like, they didn't really know who I was. I could have eaten that drawing in front of them.
Yeah.
You know, why are you doing this? But it was just amazing. I was almost crying because this thing was in front of me. So I sketched from it and got to, and spent some time with it, and then they threw me out. But then I went across the street and went down the road there to the what's the
Uffizi?
No, in the chapel across the river. I can't remember it right now. It's just a small one.
Right.
It's a large painting, but it's in the chapel.
It's the baptistry, actually, isn't it? It's the round building.
Yeah. No. This is across the river. Across the river. Right. And you put coins in, and the light comes on. You can see for like 15 minutes or whatever. And it's like part of that drawing is in that painting. And
yeah.
Like, oh my God, that could not have been a better thing.
Yeah. Those moments that I think it's a moment of reverence for the maker, for the creator.
Oh yeah. He's become one of my favorites. I just always loved his work too.
Yeah. Speaking of Europe, where else have you been there?
Let's see. We love going to Italy, so we've been there quite a few times. So Venice and Florence and the Tuscan region. We spend a lot of time there. My daughter was in Paris for 6 years, and so we went to visit her a lot, and we would just camp out near her apartment until she threw us out. And so I got to go to I would just I'd get one of the city bikes and go to the Louvre every day, and I don't go in the carousel entrance because there was fewer people. My dog is in my lap. That's why.
Oh, that's okay.
So I'm petting.
It reminds me of painters painting, and oh God, what the heck was his name? I can still see. I've watched that movie a couple of times, and I'm still trying to figure out if that was a dog or a cat. It was like it was species ambiguous. Yeah, the whole vibe over there of art is so different from art
For
here,
sure.
isn't it?
Yeah, no, completely different, completely different. A whole different feeling of it. Here, it's not even seen. Well, many people, that's a broad space thing. Many people do not appreciate art or really know the process and where it all comes from.
Right.
In Europe, it seems to be more ingrained
Did you
because it's around,
find?
there's so much more history around them. So
Oh
it's a
yeah,
bigger deal.
yeah. I mean, you know, so your constitution is like 240 years old. Yeah, well, the building that you're in is like, 1,000.
We're about to lose it from these idiots.
Yeah. The other thing too, as an artist, did you feel yourself treated differently there? And that's if and do you think it's because of being an artist that they treated you so nicely when you went into the library?
Yeah. I think, well, that definitely was part of it. And you had to have a note from a university professor to get
Mhm.
in. So I got Mark St. Pierre to write one for me. And that guy, it's like, I had forgotten my passport back in my room, but I used my license and they let me in. It's
Wow.
like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I remember, from the time that I lived in Portugal, you'd meet people, and
Oh,
it's a completely different social kind of a thing.
yeah.
And they would ask you, what do you do? And then you say you're a painter, and all of a sudden their eyes bulge, and they're
Mhm.
like, "Really? Have I ever seen your work? Is it Is it any place that hanging right now and I can go see? You have an exhibit? Are you
I'm a
published?"
refrigerator, yeah.
Yeah, and there was such a thrill, and here, well, the thing is like, well, you make any money doing that?
Yeah. How much you making? Yeah, no, totally. I love Portugal too. We were there a couple of times.
Mhm.
We were there first back in the 90s when they had just kind of opened up, and all the posadas, the government run,
Mhm.
they took over all these buildings and they ran these
Yeah.
posadas, and cheap. It was really inexpensive. We stayed in some really nice places.
Oh yeah.
And had a car, and we drove all over. Went up to, we're on our way to Porto. We stopped at what's the holy place up there? Yeah, where
Fatima.
the kids had the vision. So we were
Yeah,
looking at that.
Fatima. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the big chapel, all the limbs, like you get the wax limb and the candle,
Right.
all of that is going and people are praying. Then the whole thing started on fire. The wax just went ablaze. And this little steel door opens up, and this little short guy with the pit boots on comes out with a fire hose. And he sprays it all down, puts the hose back, and the door closes. And then they start all over again. So we left right after that. We had, okay, this is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole different vibe. That's for sure. So speaking of making a living, do you make a living as a painter?
I do. And it's been a long time coming. We've been really fortunate. Sandra's work, she's an author, a children's author.
Mhm.
And then we had also started a pottery business years ago. And so that really is where our income has been coming from. I've done everything, done
Mhm.
teaching, bartending, restaurant, everything you can think
Yeah.
of, delivering beer, appliances. And then that business took off just as we had our daughter, and which worked out really well. And but that whole business changed. The mom and pop craft shops are all gone, and so that's a whole nother business. And it just grew into right now it's all for Sandra, it's all publishing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And slowly my work started to take off. I've worked with galleries over the years. They come and go, and mostly Instagram has been a huge benefit. I've met so many collectors just on Instagram alone. So
Really?
yeah, so I've been able to do okay.
Because one of the things that we've been trying to start here in New Bedford, the South Coast. My wife is from Detroit, and they have this incredible little organization. It's mostly like ad hoc. It was started off with two antiquarians meeting for breakfast. Two old friends talking business. Then another guy joined them, and next thing you know, they looked up and it was like 80, 90 people in the room.
Yep.
All artists, and they saw something there that that they could help guide the younger guys, because as antiquarians, I mean, they run across pieces of work and they're like, okay, so they're looking at it and scratching their heads. There's no signature on it. There's no provenance. There's nothing. So to them, I mean, it got them stimulated from that point of view. And I
What's going on?
yeah, I joined up during the pandemic and found it very, very, very supportive. And I was shocked when I was told by the founder that in 9 years' time, they have sold $4 million worth of art through their members. And that membership, like I said, is around 80 on a steady basis.
Mhm.
And he takes no commission. Basically, they have a meeting once a week. The artist has an opportunity to have so many slots because it's a very tightly run thing. The artist has 2 minutes, 1 minute for each piece that they're going to present, and generally they'll have volunteers grab their work and walk through the restaurant, just like the ring, the rounds girls, I guess they used to call it, boxing matches and that kind of thing. And then if somebody in the audience said sold, because you have to give a price, then they go into a corner, they do their negotiations, exchange money and painting.
Mhm.
It's that simple.
Which is how it used to be done in the salons.
Yes. And so the point is to try to get it started here. But the difference between Detroit and here is the collectors. I only know of a couple of them are friends, but where the heck are the collectors?
Yeah. I've always felt like when you're flying into a city and you see millions of lights on, you figure everybody's got to have some artwork in that house.
Yeah.
But they actually don't.
No, they don't. They have some pretty either nothingness or some really nasty bad
Very
stuff.
small percentage of people have actually have art in their house.
Yeah.
That's what we would call art. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And and that's a big factor, is to try to get collectors and buyers hooked up with artists, because obviously they're looking for something. Why not make their lives easier?
Well, getting young collectors too is to get going. I've met some younger people that are buying, because most of my clients are older and they're downsizing. They don't want to buy anything anymore. Luckily, I've had some older friends that they are major. There's up here in Vermont on Instagram, I met this guy named Andy Hall. He's got the Hall Art Foundation. He's got castle. He bought George Bosley's castle in Germany and turned that into a museum. So he spent all the money totally renovating it. He's got a farm up in Reading, Vermont here, which there are cow barns, but they're museum quality spaces. And he's got over 7,000 pieces in his collection. And he bought some of my work. And I'm actually in a show, the second show that I've been in up here in Vermont. And so Kathy Bradford was a curator of it. And so just getting out there and like on a simple thing like Instagram, but growing that market of finding people who can buy your work is a full-time job almost.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we used to laugh a few years ago that 50% of our time was painting and 50% of it was marketing it.
Yep. I spend every day doing something.
Yeah. And now it's the frustrating level is like it's 15% if I'm lucky of painting, and 85% trying to schlep it. You said a couple of interesting things. One of them,
heard that before.
Especially not from your wife, and she's probably in the room, right? One of them is that the older collectors. Steve Remick and I have a duo show right now at the Dartmouth Cultural Center, and one of his collectors showed up when we were gallery sitting, because the South Coast Artists tour, an annual event.
Yeah.
And he came by and said hello, and he said, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to buy anything. He says, because we stopped buying. He says, actually, we've been giving away everything that we've bought over the years, giving it away to our children, because we don't want them to deal with this mess, after we're gone, or if one of us goes first,
We've actually done that ourselves.
Yeah. Which is interesting because, working with Dr. Richard Connor, who's like probably one of the biggest collectors here in New Bedford. His house is chock-a-block with artwork. Plus he's handling, I think, 4, maybe 6 estates, mid-20th century estates. So there's a shift in the market, obviously. The pandemic has created another shift, which is kind of interesting. It hasn't come out in the wash yet. guys who were not represented ever by galleries, could never get into a gallery, all of a sudden started selling work unsolicited.
Yeah.
People just saw them on Instagram and said, "Hey, how much you want for that?"
Yep.
People who made a relatively decent living as painters, who were represented, their sales crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And now with the pandemic shifting, now what's happening is I've heard that online sales have dropped as well. That people are like so pent up, they want to go talk to you.
Yeah.
They want to see your studio.
Yeah. Finally, I want to meet you.
Yeah.
I've had both. I've done okay, and I've had some friends that have done super well, which I was amazed at how well they were doing. But they had shows around the country, plus sold through their right off their websites or on Instagram again.
Mhm.
So that it's happened both ways. It's been a crazy year, and then this whole thing, the NFTs has started. So people are starting to sell. I have a friend who does monoprints, but he snow prints. He does them in the snow, and they're beautiful, but they're gone as soon as the sun comes out, they're gone. But he takes photographs of them, and he's recently sold several of those NFTs of those photographs of those prints, and he sold them for some pretty good money.
Wow. It's starting to get to be mind
I
bending.
was online on this Clubhouse thing,
Uh-huh.
and this guy was he's got a virtual gallery, and my friend is part of his gallery, and his gallery is in sort of like a building shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
The Citibank is actually renting space in the shopping center. There are all the major clothing companies have their own virtual stores within these. So it's actually happening. It's insane, and I still don't understand it, but it's happening.
No. And then the other interesting thing that you said, more than one, was about younger people. Now, there's a couple of things going on there. One of them is that they broke the taboo of if you can't see it, hold it, touch it,
Mm-hmm.
and don't buy it. And they grew up in a virtual world. They grew up with screens. So to them, it's obviously like not a big deal. And a majority of work has been sold to these millennials and Xers and Ys and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Bitcoin and everything. They're jumping on it.
Yeah. And another element is prints. Now, some of them can't afford to buy an original piece of work,
Mm-hmm.
but and I don't know where this came from, but they have this affectation, they have this affection, they have this curiosity, they have this, whatever term you want to use, that they prefer to have work done by real people versus,
Sure.
a cardboard print of some dead guy, who was famous 400 years ago.
Yep.
Which brings us to prints. Do you do prints of
I
your work?
do monoprints.
What's
And,
that?
I've worked with a friend in Baltimore. We lived in Baltimore for like 35 years.
Right.
And there's a pretty good art scene down there. And a friend of mine had a big German offset press. And so I'd go and work with him every few months and just do monoprints. But it's on offset, so you'd run it through several times.
Yeah.
And you build up the color. And so it'd be more, it's still a monoprint, but it has layers. And then, so I worked with him for a lot. So I did many prints. And then we moved up here, and then we also rented Dee Dee Shattuck's place out in South Dartmouth.
Yes.
We rented that house, which is now her son's house, for like 2 years. And so we were there, and Mark and Nicole were very close with them. And Mark invited me to be a visiting artist at UMass. And so I worked in the print shop, and I was actually just making prints. Nobody showed up. No students showed up. So I said, fine. But the press there was the one from Swain. So with the big wheel.
Yeah. And
so I used that a lot when I was at Swain. I used to make a lot of prints there. And so I just played with the print press and made a bunch of monoprints for the like whole year, which was really great.
How about print reproductions? Have you gotten into that?
With my work, my painting?
Yes.
No, I never liked those things. The giclée kind of thing.
Giclée, yeah. Giclée, French for inkjet.
I don't like them. and they're not real like art and stuff. I'd rather have a real print that somebody's worked on or a painting. And you can buy paintings from people for nothing. Like there's plenty of artists out there you can trade, you can get a painting from when they're early in their careers. So I've done that quite a few times.
Yeah, yeah. Now, which leads me to pricing. A lot of painters are caught between that rock and a hard place. They've had sales of four-figure sales of their work.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there are opportunities where they know they could dump the darn thing off for like, $500, $300, whatever, just to clear the inventory, because the stuff starts to pile up after a while.
Sure.
It's probably the only profession in the world where you probably sell like 10% of your inventory, on average.
Yeah. There are no morals in the art world.
What's that?
There are no morals in the art world as far as sales go. There's no doubt about it. Especially at the way high end, it gets crazy. It's a black market kind of. It's a crazy situation.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what happens too. You want to get into a gallery, and that's great. And then you get into the gallery, and okay, so this is selling this for $6,000, but if it's a 50-50 proposition, I'm going to get $3,000 for it. And it's like, it's better 3,000 than nothing. So now it's like, okay, so why didn't you sell that $6,000 painting to the guy who wanted to buy it for less than $6,000 2 months ago for $3,000?
Yeah. But when I was working I haven't worked for a gallery for a little bit now. But when I did, I would play, no problem. Like we would give discounts to like long collectors that have been buying for a while. I have no problem with that. I'll dicker on anything. So, and I've always wanted to keep my prices real reasonable. I'm under $10,000 for even for really large pieces. So that's still a viable, not a thing. I have many friends who are getting 30 and 40, and it's like, how do you do that? So,
well, you got some people saying, how you getting 10?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Sure. And I'm very like knock on whatever, just that you can get it. But the pricing part is you just throw it out there and something sticks at one point, and then you start making your prices go at that. So something sells at 3, then that's your price point. You can figure out where it goes.
Yeah. There is, and that's the other weird thing is that credibility factor that you might be selling work at $250, but there's really no credibility there. People are just getting a bargain. Whereas you've added another 0, all of a sudden now you're Mr. Credible.
I was lucky enough to had a sale. These are climate migrants coming north of Vermont from New York. And they bought
climate migrants. Wow.
They're coming. They're here.
Just like the lobsters are moving.
Right during COVID too, we got everybody was coming up here. They bought all kinds of real estate. There's nothing up here anymore. So they moved to Woodstock. They saw my work at the Hall Foundation show. Hadn't touched me right away, and they came the next day actually to the studio and sold 3 paintings. So actually, they sold a big painting, a middle size, and then a wood 3-dimensional pieces that I do. So, I charged them for the 2 paintings, and I gave them the wood piece. So I'll do deals like that, and then I delivered it for free. So I rented it and delivered. So you play with all that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that they were buzzing about that more than the.
They loved it. They found it really generous, and it was. But it was. I'm there to help you out.
Yeah. Now, dickering and bartering and haggling and every other euphemism for that. With your expertise and experience in from the gallery side of things, how common is that? And does it vary from
all the time,
region to region?
All the time. Anybody that's buying art, even in the real high end stuff, especially the real high end stuff, they're making mega deals. You're doing all kinds of ways to. So whatever you're seeing as a price, a major collector's not going to pay that.
So they don't pay sticker, in other words.
No. So that's the thing. It's all crazy. You never know what people are paying, and they're gonna charge and get what they can get.
I had a situation in Portugal where this doctor was opening up this very large medical facility, and my friend and the gallerist Rui was saying, "God, this guy's come back 3 or 4 times. and he keeps looking at your work and looking at your work and looking at your work. I was like, I wish the heck he would, do something, right? So he walks in with a decorator, and he's got a budget, and he's gonna buy all these pieces of artwork. And Rui's like, I don't understand. He was like looking at your stuff and nothing else. Now he's picking out all these other pieces. And then all of a sudden he says, oh, so give me a price on this. So he gives him a price, and he said, nah, I'll pay you this much, and you've got to throw in his work for free.
Yeah.
And Ray says, well, you bought all these known names, they're known in Europe and in Portugal, then you don't know this guy. He's an American. He's like, I don't care. Now I can afford to buy to get this work. It's no skin off my nose, right?
No.
It
But
is.
that's the market. That's the art market. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just like many things, like buying a car. They're horse traders. The original horse traders are car dealers now.
Yeah. It is nuts.
If you have cash, you're going to get a better deal.
Yeah. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. It is. It is kind of crazy. Jules Olitsky, that's the painter. I always just hit me as you're stroking the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. I'm stroking a dog. I'm not doing it.
Now let's talk about your themes. Since you went there, some of your themes, like run on the edge of blush for some people. Some of your motifs. Some of them are very, very poignant. But they're all very human, your subject matter.
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
I know.
What's that?
I paint what I know, and I tend to paint in season for whatever. Like if it's winter time, I'm mostly winter scenes because it's what I see and it's what stimulates. It gives me an idea. Mm-hmm. Now it's summertime, we have a beautiful garden. I'll do a lot of flower paintings, which I never did before. Mm-hmm. And I'm really enjoying doing it. So it's been fun. I've been doing a lot of flowers. I've never done, or I used to do landscapes like in college. I just started doing more landscapey kinds of things. I even added I put a cow in a painting about a month ago. Never did that before because I never thought it would work. Or it would just look corny, but I liked it. So I've done like 4 cow paintings.
Yeah. I mean,
it's amazing. People loved it. It got more hits on Instagram because there was a cow in the landscape. I was like, what's going on here?
Well, I just flashed back to a conversation I had with Steve Remick when we were gallery sitting. He's talking about like sometimes, the waves of buying, of sales that he said it comes like in droves sometimes, and then nothing. It's dry. It's almost like the weather, downpours, and then we don't have rain for months,
Yep.
And he said one of the things he discovered was that the title of the work has a lot to do with the sale.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, great. When I was an abstract painter, I refused to put sparkling, bubbling brook or whatever for my work because it was, I'm trying to paint nothing. So I would have basically, I remember galleries would call them saying, this says 45 number 3-2017. What is that? Is that a catalog number? Yeah. Well, what's the title? It's the same thing.
Yeah. Put a hashtag on it. I actually love titles, and they come to me while I'm painting or at some point.
Yeah.
I love putting titles on stuff.
Yeah. But do you find that the titles also stimulate people to purchase?
I can't. I think it might. You know what? One of the paintings I recently sold, it was a woman with a power. This woman came in and said, "I love work with powerful women." I'm saying, oh. Something. Well, I can do that. And I had a painting with this woman. It came from a photograph of this woman at a baseball park. She had her baby in her hand, and she was with a glove, and she was catching a fly ball coming into the stands, and everybody around. It was a great image. It was an amazing image. It reminded me of so many older paintings. So I used that as a painting motif, and she saw that and like boom. And the title of the painting was "She Persisted," and so. There you have it right there. She bought it because she loved the powerful women thing in the title.
Yeah, because I mean, I noticed that people will do a couple of things.
It was about
Watching them.
baseball, but you didn't care about sports, but it was baseball, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I watch people. They'll walk up to the painting, they'll step back, and then they'll walk and they'll look at the label, the tag, or they'll look at the tag, then they'll step back and look at the painting. It's like the tag has to somehow be connected to the painting, and vice versa. It validates, I guess, their impression.
Yeah.
When
we look at art, like we'll go to a museum, we'll look at stuff. We're looking for completely different reasons than what most people are going in to look for. I'm looking for ideas for how the paint's being put on and the composition and all the like many different things. Where a lot of people are coming in and they're looking for just basic. They want to see a landscape and they want to give them inspiration from a real landscape or something real concrete.
I'm gonna get to the cow, but before I forget, last time I was up in Vermont, it was when I drove my eldest daughter up to Exeter Junction to NECI, New England Culinary Institute, which unfortunately folded. But wow, what a school that was!
They're dropping like flies up here.
And my question is, I mean, NECI pretty much owned Montpelier and Exeter Junction. I mean, every building, every cafe you walked into was somehow affiliated with the school. What happened? What happened there?
I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what happened there, but like Green Mountain College closed, and that was a small little town. And same thing, the whole economy collapses. So we're very lucky to have Bennington College here, and it's doing okay. They're having their issues, but they're going to actually have the largest incoming classes this fall than they've ever had.
Wow. Because I mean, I was thinking, like, if somebody with deep pockets and a huge heart for heart and mind for art came into the area and reestablished a school here, could they almost turn a neighborhood or neighborhoods into a company town, meaning that everything that surrounded the school was affiliated with the school? The cafes were run by the students as a work study or whatever, that, in other words, a microcosm, a micro environment.
It's funny, we're actually doing that here in North Bennington. We just had that's funny, not funny, but we had a memorial service for a friend who died this past year, and he had a restaurant here in town. But he's brilliant. He also started a water power plant. He took over a dam and put new turbines in, and he figured out how to do it. That's how he was amazing with his mind. But and part of his thing was to bring people to this area by doing all of that, bringing in young people, getting the college kids to stay, he would teach kids how to cook, and many of them have become chefs. So like keeping that thing going on. So that's a big deal up here. That's a real thing that's happening, actually.
Yeah, I guess it might be
everything.
It might be an offshoot of a movement that started about 20 years ago called re-urbanization. And then one of the offsets to it was called re-villagization. Where people are craving small. What's that?
You have to have a library and you have to have a brewery. Those are the two most important things to get started.
A library and a brewery.
And a brewery. Sometimes they can be the same thing. They can be in one building. But any successful redevelopment of a small town all over the country, those are the first two things they had to have.
My brain is like racing at hyperspeed right now.
And it's working, like we've got a garden over here where all the kids come over to from the elementary school, and we're teaching them where their food comes from. So they do potatoes, and then when they come back to school, they harvest the potatoes, and then they make stuff. They make French fries. They see where the potato chips come from. Actually, the first wave of kids come in the morning, they dig up all the potatoes, and they have to go to the supermarket and buy new ones, and they bury them. So the next class can come in and dig more up.
But
and they're bringing their parents to the garden to see what they're doing. They're so proud of it all. So it's beginning, small steps.
Well, so it's exposure and experience, experiential, learning, which I was always a big into, whether I was teaching art history, my marketing classes, or even my studio classes. Let's get back to the cow.
One step further, though, here is Matthew Perry also a Swain student. He's got a thing up here called the Vermont Arts Exchange, and he teaches art to kids. So that whole process, so the food and the art and everything is like that's the whole thing happening up here, and he's a big part of that.
All right. Well, one more aspect, one more segment to that. In Rhode Island, it's pretty a unique thing. You've got these recycling stations and so on and so forth. But what they have is they have a recycling facility that is strictly focused on artists.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a sculptor and you do like I know Louise Nevelson kind of things, like little funky cutout pieces of wood and so on and so forth. And there's a furniture, a mill or a cabinet shop or whatever. Instead of that stuff going into the landfill, it goes into this recycling center, and you can go there and pick up all the wood that you want. Or I mean, you name the material. If it has an artistic if it has the potential of artistic application, it's there.
Yep.
And it's kind of that's kind of a very cool thing. Excuse me. So what's with a cow?
I don't know. And it's a Vermont thing. I think a friend of mine.
Woody Jackson?
Woody Jackson.
Yeah.
He did all the cows for Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah.
He's actually a friend of ours.
But he started off by doing the cutout cows in the pastures, right? Just as a
Yep.
as
He's
one of those weird
cows.
like bathtub Jesus things, or
He's
right?
Still doing cows. Still doing it. It's amazing. He does. We met him at the New York gift show. We used to sell our have a booth there to sell pottery and everything. And Woody would be right next to us selling. He had light switches with cows on them. He had T-shirts. He had everything. And I don't think he really ever sold anything. His big deal was he made a deal with Ben and Jerry, so he gets some money like every year, so much money every year. The new company that bought him out, I don't think would ever want it. They could have bought him out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the cow thing, they're up here. I ride my bike, and like the other day, there was a big black cow in the middle of the road. I called the farmer, woke her up, and so she didn't know her fence, a tree fell on her fence, so the cows were getting out onto the road. So this thing it was like right in front of me. And then the other day on the same farm, I'm riding by there, and there's a whole bunch of cows in the field, and they look like boxes. They were just square blobs with legs and with these patterns on them. So okay, I can do something with that. So it's using just that flat ground of the grass, and then the contours of the landscape, and the like sky, clouds, which I love, upper landscape, lower landscape, and then the cows within. So it's like, boom, okay, now I can do it. I can make that work.
It's as you're speaking, I'm thinking of Jay Peterman from the Jay Peterman catalog, who had that little manifesto written on the inside front cover.
Yeah.
And one of the excerpts that I remember from that was, when will American manufacturers realize, I think that's how he led into that paragraph, that people want things that make their lives the way they wish they were.
Exactly.
And I guess if you could capture that in your artwork, I don't know why a Woody Jackson cutout cow that you could stick on your front lawn completes you.
up here, Grandma Moses lived right down the road.
Yeah.
The museum has a great collection. It's Gallery Saint Etienne. The director of it, he found her. What's his name? I can't remember his name. A German guy. He was going up north to see the sculptor David Smith. On the way, he stopped in Bennington and he saw her paintings. That's how she became famous. He took her paintings and took them to New York and sold them. But her thing was that she was asked one time, "How can you paint such simple pictures, pretty pictures? Why don't you paint something really serious?" That because the war was going on, Vietnam and everything. And she said, I something like I paint the pictures, the paintings that I want of the world I want to exist, which I thought was like, okay, that's pretty profound.
Yeah, it is.
Moses, even, it's like you didn't expect that. So I've looked at over the years. I've been over to the museum many times, looked closer at some of these paintings, and they're actually really good. When they're good, just like any artist. But Some of her paintings are actually very good. Composition wise, they're spot on. So
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end of this, and I want to ask you about um, the belief system that no artist goes it alone. I mean, Grandma Moses, like you said, is minding her own business, making herself happy.
yep,
And
yep.
a famous German painter guy, sees her work, and boom, she's off to another level. I think that's the template for success seems to be, once again, coming from the Buddhist mindset that there's no such
Yep.
thing as success. Has nothing to do with luck. It has to do with timing, being at the right place at the right time.
That's the best, and putting yourself in that right place
Right.
takes Africa.
Well, which is also, I guess, the
And being
definition of
ready.
being present, right?
And being ready.
Yeah.
Whenever that time comes. So
Right.
meet someone.
So, what advice do you have for anybody that's listening to this? That's
Get your ass out there, do the work, number one, and try to get as good as you can at it. I'm still learning. I'm just figuring out how to paint. It's been like 40 years. We just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. We got married the same year we graduated. So
Congratulations.
40 years officially sort of painting. Taking me that long just to really begin to figure out how it's done. So get to work. Don't worry about it. Keep at it. Persevere. Be patient. But you got to get out there. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. You got to go to New York. If you can live in New York and survive down there, all the better. That's where the action is, and you're gonna have a better opportunity. But it's a hard place to live. It's not easy to pull it off. So I like it up here. Lots simpler to live up here. Way simpler to get to make things work. And just like Bedford, that area is a gorgeous place to live, but it's not the best place to be to have an art career.
No, and although you've heard all the statistics, the whole thing was kicked off by Richard Florida and and his concept of the creative economy, the maker economy, and then a couple of national and international surveys. New Bedford has always been in the top 10.
Yep.
And then somebody bandied about a number of $9 million of the economy is from the arts. And I've asked so many people on the show about, the 80-20 rule. I mean, how much of your work do you sell directly to people in New Bedford? And it's very little.
Very little.
A lot of it comes from outside or away, as they would say, up north.
It's almost like New Bedford rising again. It was the wealthiest people in the world at one point were living in New Bedford. And then the whaling event crashed. Which was a very short period of time. What was that, like 15 years? Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a long time, but they made massive fortunes, like the oil barons of the next generation.
Right.
A lot of those New Bedford whalers had that money. They came up this way. They came up to the Hudson River. Hudson, New York, for instance, was founded by New Bedford whalers, and they took all their money elsewhere. But with wind power and New Bedford being a focal point, that's going to bring a lot more cash back into the area, and money in the area is what does it. New York has a shitload of money and world travelers. A lot of people go there. That's why it's a marketplace.
Yeah. There has to be. It can't be anaerobic. It can't be stasis. It has to breathe. It has to move.
Yeah.
And the younger
LA, New York, Beijing. We had the opportunity to go to China a few times. Beijing art market is going crazy because there's so much money.
Yeah, I'm still wondering. I've asked several people about Dubai and the Emirates.
Yep.
Like
Dubai is selling shitloads. Well, Dubai is a money laundering capital of the world. So artwork, money laundering.
I guess that explains why some of these, what do they call them, art brokers, that's their official title, would come into a place and would buy containers worth of art from people that probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to sell to anyone else.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder, where the heck did all this stuff go? And I guess it really doesn't matter. What they're doing is they're, like you said, that they're washing that money.
It's all it comes down to in many ways. Sadly, it ruins the market for a lot of people because sometimes it puts their pricing up so high that you can't get there again. So, some of the high-end artists, which is not like I wish I had this problem, but they have to deal with not going too high with numbers because you can never recoup that again. Once that happens, your market's gone.
Well, I keep equating it to something called Matumba, which is an African marketplace, and primarily, when you go to Goodwill and all those, the One Planet and all those different colored boxes, and you throw your clothes in there, they have people who go through their brokers, they buy it. Very little of that stuff ends up going to the people you think it's going to go to. And it's graded. Some of the really nasty stuff goes to the rag business, that they shred it and do stuff like that. But there are people who go through that specifically for t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll buy, a lot of t-shirts, and then that will be graded again. So if they find a 1975 Led Zeppelin concert t-shirt, okay, that's in like pristine condition, that's what they call snowflakes.
eBay.
That one shirt will pay for their entire investment.
Yep. Sadly. But that's the market.
And that's what I'm assuming a lot of these art brokers are doing, is that they're picking up, as much work as they can to find somebody in that container's worth of artwork that is going to, they'll help accelerate and then obviously get their investment back,
Yeah. Well, what's the one to do about the Michelangelo, which is not really a Michelangelo probably, but they spent $40 million trying to redo it and make it look like one. And then they paid I forgot the numbers now.
Are you speaking about Salvatore Mundi?
Yeah.
That's actually Da Vinci.
Da Vinci, rather.
Da Vinci, yeah.
But it looks like that painting of that. Remember the woman that went in and crossed out the painting in the church and made it look like really bad. That's what the Mundi.
He was a restorer. Yeah, they'll never live that down.
No.
Spanish restorer. You're not going to get a job. Yeah, it's kind of bad.
Never see it again. That's gone. Yeah, it's gone his boat somewhere. I think it's on his yacht.
Yeah, that's another thing. But as you said too, as a lot of these folks are dying, especially those who had no succession plan, no idea how they were going to be, where their estates are going to go. There'll be other floods of work, and I've always likened it to the wine business, where they have something that they refer to as the wine lake.
Mm-hmm.
And the wine lake is where nasty vintages go because they use it for chemicals, for glacial acetic acid, but also some of the finest vintages go into that wine lake to these wine brokers because it keeps their case rate, steady. And I always wondered about all the artwork in the world, under beds, in attics, in basements, in containers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tear up a lot of stuff. If it'll sit around for a while, and if a couple of years or whatever, if I don't like it, gone.
Really?
I keep everything kind of. If I have to like it after a few years, or it just goes away.
Wow. Mark, this has been great. I mean, this is like one of those conversations where I think the more I talk to you, the more you keep feeding my head about,
we've missed so much.
Yeah. Yeah, we have. So let's see, which Barbara Walters question am I going to ask you?
I won't cry.
No. If there were one thing in your career as an artist that you were given the opportunity to do over, what would that be?
Ooh, a do-over. It's nothing in particular. Time. I've wasted some time in my feeling, in my point of view. I've wasted some time over the years, which I wish I could have back, and had been more focused earlier on in some ways. Although I've been really focused and of all these things I've done, but you can always do better. I wish I had done better sooner and had not wasted some time having too much fun in some areas, and spent more time with a nose down. But when you're younger, you got to do that. You got to have your fun too.
Yeah, well, it goes to like you didn't know what you didn't know when you needed to know what you needed to know, that
But
kind of
shoulda,
thing.
woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this, like one of those motivational speakers said that there's this island called Someday Isle.
Yeah, yeah. But as time goes, as we get older, time is the number one, and that's always on my mind. And I've even become way more focused on how I spend my time, and I actually say no to a lot of things where I should be going to. But
Right.
I won't work. I only have a little bit how much time we have, and
Right.
we're losing friends. Our buddy Mark St. Pierre gone way too soon, and like you never know. You gotta keep at it.
Yeah. I don't know what it would have been worse, because my wife and I were at that party at Richard Carner's house, and I wanted to introduce her to Nicole and Mark, and for the few brief moments that we would get together or bump into each other, it gave me a chance to speak Quebecois, which is basically an excuse for speaking bad French.
Yeah,
I haven't.
It's bad French anyway.
Oh, it is. Yeah. All you have to do is not open your mouth when you speak. Mumble.
I'm dissing big time.
But
Mark and Nicole came on our honeymoon.
there's a story for another time. You're gonna have to tell that one to Dawn.
Yeah.
But I was just talking to Steve the other day because gallery sitting. So and when you're with another artist, so this is an opportunity to be like trapped with somebody, so to speak, for like several hours. And it's like I always I was going to go introduce Paula, my wife, to them, and also try to get both of them on this podcast. And then I got the call the following morning from Pam Haas telling me that he had passed away. But then I didn't realize it until the moment I said it to Steve. I said, had I gotten up to them and introduced Paul and everything and got them to say, oh, yeah, we'll be on the show, I think it probably would have been worse knowing that they accept it. And then,
Yeah. Or maybe you wouldn't have been working so goddamn hard on that house, and he would have prepared for you, and he'll be with us.
You just never know.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Mark Berry.
My pleasure. Really nice to meet you.
Hang in there. I'm going to take us out.
All righty.
Well, it's Ron Fortier once again, where we've reached the end of our latest podcast episode. And just a reminder that the In Focus podcast is brought to you by the Artist Index and generously supported by Heavenly Spirits Imports. And the pandemic may look like it's over, but it really isn't over, because we just don't know it's like New England weather. Wait a minute, something's going to change. So with that in mind, see you later. Use your head. Be nice to each other, and we'll catch you on the end. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.